The number that stopped me was $207. That's what the counter at AutoZone printed on the quote for a new battery, installation, and a battery protection spray they wanted to add. My truck had been cranking slow a couple of mornings in a row, and I brought it in to get the battery tested while I was picking up oil. The guy came back with the printout and said it was showing weak on their tester. I looked at the terminal before he could say anything else. There was a golf ball of white powder packed around the positive post, dense as chalk, wedged tight against the cable clamp. I told him I'd think about it. I drove home. I pulled a can of Coke out of the fridge. That $207 receipt is still sitting in my glove box. Here is what that situation cost the average American over a lifetime of owning cars. AAA's 2025 driving cost study put annual vehicle maintenance at $1,475 to $1,786 per car. RepairPal's national average for a battery replacement runs $412 to $448 at a shop. If you walk into a dealership with the same complaint, a Toyota Camry battery replacement comes in at $784 to $804 on their current estimates. Now here's the part that should bother you. Terminal corrosion is one of the most common reasons a perfectly good battery fails a store tester. The sulfate crystals on the post insulate the connection. The battery reads low voltage because the circuit is physically blocked, not because anything is worn out. The battery gets swapped. Nobody mentions the fix that costs less than a soda. Now look, I know exactly what you are thinking. I thought the same thing when the man at the counter told me about it. Keep watching. The white powder on a battery terminal and the bluish crust you sometimes see on the cable clamp are two different compounds. The white is lead sulfate, PbSO4. It forms when lead from the battery post reacts with sulfuric acid from the electrolyte and with atmospheric moisture. The blue-green crust is copper sulfate, CuSO4. It forms when the copper clamp goes through the same reaction, and the process is accelerated by the electrical current running through it. Both of those compounds are electrical insulators. They sit between the post and the cable, and they block current from passing through. The battery is not failing. The connection is interrupted. Bellevue College runs a standard undergraduate chemistry lab, Lab 5, available on their public website, where students titrate phosphoric acid out of cola drinks using sodium hydroxide. The measured concentration comes out around 0.5 to 0.7 grams per liter. That puts Coke at a pH of 2.37, which is what a peer-reviewed beverage study published through PubMed Central found when they measured 380 different drinks in 2016. Lemon juice is around 2.25. This is genuine acid in a can you can buy for 50 cents. Phosphoric acid is listed by OSHA as an industrial rust converter, same chemistry as navel jelly, same process used in metal prep before painting. Against lead sulfate and copper sulfate, it protonates the ionic lattice and pulls the metal ions into solution. The crust dissolves. The carbon dioxide from carbonation fizzes into the pits in the metal and mechanically lifts the loosened material out. The Coca-Cola Company confirms all of this on their own corporate FAQ page. They state directly that the phosphoric acid in their product reacts with rust and corrosion on metal surfaces. Their recommendation is to drink it instead. Those are their words, not mine. The store brand battery sitting in my truck right now, the one with the East Penn factory code stamped on the label, has been in there over a year with clean terminals ever since I started doing this. That battery video and this one are telling the same story. The counter guy who stopped me from walking out had the kind of hands that have spent more time under hoods than mine ever will. He called me back just before I reached the door and said quietly that I should look at those terminals first, not just glance at them, really look. He described exactly what I came home to find: white crust packed tight against the post, dense enough to mistake for dried paint. He told me what caused it, what fixed it, and the one thing I had to make sure I did after. I said I would try it. I got home and pulled a can out of a half-empty 12-pack in the garage fridge, about 50 cents in the buy. I popped it and drizzled it slowly over the positive terminal. Fizzing started within about 10 seconds, right where the crust was thickest. I was standing in the driveway at 8 in the morning in my work clothes, pouring soda on my truck. My neighbor pulled out of his driveway, slowed all the way down, looked once, and kept right on going. I let it sit for 5 minutes, grabbed the two-headed wire brush from the tool shelf, post brush on one end, and clamp brush on the other, about $5 at any parts store, and the surface underneath came up clean. Bright, bare metal, the way it looks the day a battery is new. I rinsed it with a water bottle, dried it off with a shop rag, reconnected the cables, and turned the key. 12 minutes total. The battery that was reading weak on the store tester cranked the truck like it had never been a question. Now, I am not going to sit here and tell you this fixes everything. A cracked battery case, a dead cell, an alternator that has been overcharging all summer. Coke does not touch any of that. If the terminals come clean and the battery still will not hold a load, you actually need a battery. But that is not what most of those service tickets are written for. What happened when I turned the key is honestly why I kept that receipt. What the counter guy said at the end was the part I almost skipped. Rinse it. I ain't gonna lie, I thought that was the obvious part. It wasn't. Coke runs about 10% sugar by weight, roughly 39 grams per 12-ounce can. Leave that dried on a terminal and it holds atmospheric moisture and pulls corrosion right back, faster than if you'd left it alone. I know because I skipped the rinse the first time and came back 3 months later to the same white crust. The water bottle rinse and a dry shop rag are what make the fix stick. After that, put anti-corrosion felt washers on the posts, red for positive, green for negative, about $4 a pair at any parts store, and a small dab of dielectric grease on each post. That is what turns a 12-minute job into something you don't have to think about again for a year or more. I pulled up the safety data sheet for Permatex 80369, the battery cleaner spray sitting on the shelf at the same AutoZone where I almost spent $207. The SDS is a public document, downloadable straight from Permatex's own website. Active chemistry, petroleum distillate propellant, ammonia solution at 0.1 to 0.5% by weight, surfactant at 0.1 to 0.5%, and water. That is the complete list. At $8.99 for 5.75 ounces, you are paying $1.56 per ounce of ammoniated soapy water with a color change dye that turns from orange to yellow when it contacts residual battery acid. The dye is the most sophisticated ingredient in the can. A 12-ounce can of Coke in a 12-pack runs about 4 cents per ounce. Same job, different side of the pH scale. The spray is alkaline and the Coke is acidic, and both dissolve the same corrosion. The markup between them is roughly 40 to 1. Nobody's hiding this. The SDS is public. They sell what people pick up off the shelf because nobody told them to read the label. That $207 AutoZone printout is still in my glove box. I keep it there. It is a good reminder of what a corroded terminal looks like on paper, a $200 problem, and what it actually is when you know the chemistry, a 50-cent can of soda, and 12 minutes in your own driveway. If a shop or dealer has handed you a battery service ticket in the last couple of years, drop the number in the comments. I want to see what they are charging out there. The next video is about another part shops called a dealership only repair. It runs about $8 at AutoZone.